High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home. Don Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here.
Welcome back to another episode of TableSetters, covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined by my tag team partner, Devin. What's up, man?
What's going on, dude? Happy to be here. A couple weeks ago, we put out a poll on Twitter to our followers of which team we should try to cover in a single team-centric episode next. And I'm happy to say we're delivering on their choice of the Texas Rangers tonight.
So no warming up in the bullpen. Today we open the show with our guest, Jared Sandler, one of the radio and TV voices of the Texas Rangers on 105.3 The Fan. Jared brings you all the action behind the scenes inside as the Rangers gear up for the 2025 season. We got some fresh faces, high expectations, and of course, exciting storylines. You can follow Jared on X at Jared Sandler and catch all the Rangers broadcasts all season long. Jared, thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you?
Hey, fellas. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great. I'm here in Surprise, Arizona. I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Surprise. It's a retirement town where you're going to have a tough time getting into a restaurant at 5:30, but it'll probably be cleared out by about 6:30.
The early bird specials over there, I'm sure, are kicking off the evening at what, 3:30 dinner over there?
Where I had dinner tonight, they had, usually they have like an early bird dinner thing. Like you can pair an entree and two sides, whatever, up to like 6 p.m. This one, like it was like a hard stop at 4:30, which means that they have people that are obviously getting dinner before then. It's like, wild. I don't know. It's foreign to me, but I guess that's the thing.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of the time at spring training, getting ready for the season. And we're going to jump right into the conversation. And Jared, you've had a fascinating journey from being a multi-sport athlete in Dallas to pursuing a broadcasting career, starting at USC. So just speaking about your athletic background and how did that shape to broadcasting, especially when now you're involved with the Texas Rangers and analyzing and trying to understand what's going on in the field?
Yeah, well, first of all, being around these guys, I feel bad when the word athlete is used in describing me. But I guess there was a day I did set the JCC Peanut League record for points in a game when I was 6 years old. That was probably like my closest to ever being an NBA player. But yeah, I mean, I came from an athletic family. My grandfather was a professional sprinter. My dad was a professional soccer player. My brothers were really good athletes, and sports played such a huge part of my life. Playing sports for almost, I guess now as I've gotten older, maybe just a little bit more than half my life, but just, I think it was the conversation I knew from a very young age. So I knew that when it came time to actually think about what I wanted to do with my life, not, play 3 professional sports, which is what I thought, when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. I was going to win a World Series for the Rangers, a Stanley Cup for the Stars. I was going to bring the Mavs their first NBA title and, win a Super Bowl. And I was going to do all of it. And then, you realize that's not reality. But I knew I wanted to get into sports, and I figured broadcasting would be a fun thing to try. I thought about the way that, I understood sports and what was a big part of my sports experience. And, for me, it wasn't selling tickets or sponsorship. It was, from watching games and listening to these different voices who helped me, enjoy the experience. So I wanted to give it a shot, and I've been fortunate to trick enough people along the way.
So Eric Nadel is one person you work alongside with the Texas Rangers, Ford C. Frick Award winner, long career. What have you taken away from working with him? Any lessons that you've learned working beside him?
A ton. I mean, I don't want to get too in the weeds. We could talk about this forever, but yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate. I mean, I think subconsciously Eric's a big reason why I'm doing this. I would, when I was little, I didn't have a TV in my room. So, I didn't have like screen time restrictions or anything. It wasn't like I wasn't allowed to watch TV, but when it was bedtime, I'd kick and scream. I'd want to watch, an extra minute of the Mavs game or an extra batter for the Rangers game, whatever. But I had my radio and I'd listen to these games as I was falling asleep, and I'd listen to Eric. And, and then getting the chance to meet him when I was in college and developing a relationship in which he kind of took on the role of mentor was, I mean, that just on its own was like, wow, like I've hit the jackpot. I mean, this guy I look up to, I think is, such an amazing broadcaster. He's taking the time to tell me why I suck and how I can get better. Like what can be better than that? And then, getting the chance to work with him the last, decade plus, our relationship is one that is way more meaningful than just, coworker. And as a broadcaster, I think what he is known for by a lot of our fans is just the way he can paint a picture so vividly. There's some broadcasters, they're great at, the big moment. They've got, a deep booming voice or this, everyone's kind of got their thing, right? It's no different than an athlete. Not every athlete has the same set of strengths. And, Eric is he's so bright. He's a New York guy and then went to Brown, and he's so smart and so crafty with his words. And I think our fans would talk about that. But, a couple things. He's just so incredibly curious, and not in the like, why are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there? Why this? Why that? But like legitimate curiosity that takes you down a path that uncovers this unique nugget or great story that otherwise would not have been known. And that has allowed him, and I think those who follow and what is his teachings in that regard, to really connect the fans with the team and with the players and with what's going on in a way that is so far beyond what the internet can tell you, right? The internet's changed the dynamic of broadcasting. I've only broadcast in the internet era, obviously, but I mean, it used to be that the information you got wasn't out there at all. But now, like, I get a nugget. We're in spring training. We're meeting a lot of new players. I go to Wikipedia to try to get a little background in these guys. Fans can do the same thing. And it's our job as broadcasters, I think, to go deeper than that, because if all I'm doing is telling you something you can look up in 3 seconds on the internet, like what am I really, there are other elements of broadcasting, but like as far as the storytelling, I'm not really doing my job. And then I just think the other thing is, as a broadcaster, and maybe you guys think about this, through this podcast, you get taught about all these mechanics and stuff and the fundamentals, and they're important. They are. I mean, they wouldn't be taught and they wouldn't be considered fundamentals if they weren't. But I've never had a listener come up to me and say, "Man, I really love the way you gave time and score every 90 seconds. That just holy smokes, the way you set up every single pitch." Right? Those aren't the things that the listener cares about. They're important, but like, I don't know, John Sterling called games for the biggest franchise in baseball and one of the biggest in the world, one of the biggest brands. And, over the last 10, 15 years, I don't know that John Sterling was a guy who nailed the fundamentals, but he had a style, he had a way, he was interesting. He was an entertainer. Right. And I think Eric helped explain that to me. Who cares about the fundamentals? You don't want to sound like a robot with the fundamentals. You got to be you. And those are some of the things he really harped on.
Well, speaking of someone being themselves in the booth, I have to ask you about another legend. I saw you posted a picture sometime last year with the late Bob Uecker. Just give us anything about your interactions with him and what he meant to fellow broadcasters.
He meant a lot. And I don't think the average person who just knows him from Major League, maybe, Mr. Belvedere or whatever, Johnny Carson show. I mean, his resume is incredibly impressive, right? But if you know him just from Major League, you think of like a really funny kind of parody broadcaster, satirical broadcaster in a way. I hope that people realize like he is an icon as a broadcaster, not because he's Harry Doyle, but because he's Bob Uecker. And Eric actually used to have these CDs back when cars used to have CD players, and they were recordings of old games, and he'd listen to them throughout spring training. And he gave me one once, and I just picked a random game. I don't even remember the CD like had like labels on top. So I'm sure they did, but like, it wasn't like I conscious like, oh, I want a Brewers game. I want Bob Uecker back in the day. I got an opening day. It was Red Sox Brewers, probably in the 80s. I don't remember. but it was Bob Uecker. And it was Bob Uecker, like, back in the 80s. And it was awesome. Like he was so fun and entertaining and energetic. And I mean, he was a great broadcaster, but we went to Milwaukee last year. And I think I don't want to sound morbid, but we kind of had a sense that it might be the last time we see Bob because he doesn't travel. We were not going to go. We aren't going to Milwaukee this year. We would not be going to Milwaukee in 25. We likely weren't going to see him in spring training. And so we made sure before those 3 games to spend as much time with Bob as we could. And I'll tell you a quick little story. I mean, we're going through a process right now in spring training on the TV side where we're interviewing about 50 to 60 guys in camp. And one of those guys is Hobie Milner, who spent 3 years with the Brewers. And gosh, you ask him about Bob Uecker and he lights up and he'll talk for, 10 minutes on Uecker. And then also interviewed Adrian Hauser, who played for the Brewers. And I asked Adrian about Uecker. And Adrian's from Oklahoma. He's kind of a big, kind of got a country toughness feel to him. And, he was slow to answer. And I was like, oh, shoot, like, did he not like Uecker? Like, everyone likes Uecker. He had to like Uecker. His eyes started welling up. And he was on the Mets last year. And I guess he never got the chance to talk to Bob. And it was not like an emotional, this is not like a Roy Firestone moment or anything. It wasn't like building towards that, but he got emotional talking about what Bob Uecker meant to him and meant to his teammates. And, that's, as a broadcaster, gosh, if I could get guys to speak about me 10% of the way they talk about Bob Uecker and the love he had for the game and all that stuff, that would be a huge win. And I don't know that I'll ever get that because he has the former player side of him that he really could connect with with current players. But there's certain things that like I listen to when I hear these guys talk about him. But it was really touching and I guess it was very meaningful to be a part of Adrian's reaction to that question, because it is so clear what Bob Uecker genuinely meant to him. And I think that whether it's for players, broadcasters, anyone who had a chance to be around Bob, you have a similar reaction. I'll tell you, when I found out the news, I mean, I don't like when someone dies and people try to piggyback on the emotion of that death. And it's like, you met the guy once, dude, come on. I've had, intermittently over the last 10 years, chances to interact with Bob. I'm not going to claim like I, had the best friend relationship with him, but it was just, he's an icon in our game and an icon for broadcasters. And that was tough to see.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great story to hear over there, and just hearing about the connection and all the different people that he's touched in the game of baseball, and his voice resonates and it's going to be living forever, similar to all the legendary voices out there, Mel Allen and Vince Scully, and Bob Uecker is the soundtrack to a lot of summers in Milwaukee, but just summers all over the place. But I love that. And also doing my research for doing this show here, I was looking up some of Eric Nadel's stuff, and I found this video. I think it might've been a compilation video on something. You may be familiar with it, but he was talking about early on broadcasting. It's on YouTube, about a 15-20 minute video of him talking about being a Brooklyn kid and getting into baseball. And he mentioned the story just like that. You were saying that he would listen to old calls and still does that to this day on flights elsewhere, just to kind of get an understanding of how we should add things to the game and pull things from all the broadcasters all over the place. And I thought that's fantastic, because that's something that, as you mentioned, you bring a little flair from everywhere and bring your own personality. And you can tell Eric Nadel has that. Yeah.
And Eric still he like has like a CD player that he carries around sometimes, which is like
That's
so
awesome.
Bizarre. I mean, yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely 100%. And, I don't take for granted, the fact that I get to work with a legend, just like I know Brian Anderson and Jeff Levering and Sophia Minert and Josh Mauer and Lane Grindle. I don't want to forget everyone, anyone,
sure.
But they got to work with a legend, right? And it's yeah. I mean, but Bob transcended baseball, right? He helped make baseball cool, and that's that's a powerful thing.
So you are one of the few people in the world to have a 2023 World Series ring. So just talk to that a little bit about what your role was during that run, and looking back, how special all of that was now that you're about 2 years removed from that.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I grew up a a Rangers fan. I grew up in Dallas. I lived through 2010, which was actually like a fun experience. First, ride to the World Series, but 2011, that was haunting. It to the degree that sports can really impact you like that impacted me in a negative way. My stepsister, who I love to death, she married a guy from St. Louis, and like he's a big Cardinals fan, and I had a really tough time with the fact that like he loved the Cardinals. Like I love him. And I eventually got over it early on in their relationship, but like it still kind of bugged me. But to be able to experience that in this role was something I'll hopefully never forget. I don't ever wear the ring. I didn't earn it. I didn't throw a pitch. I didn't, take an at bat. I consider myself incredibly lucky to have one, and I'm so grateful to all the people who actually did the work to help us have that experience. But you see the way something like that impacts people, all the work that people put in, a lot of the people who don't, they're not front and center, the staff, and how much we all sacrifice a big chunk of the year, whether it's a home game or on the road. Baseball's a long season, and so I got to experience it. Not only, I've never lost the fan side of me, right? And maybe I wasn't out in the stands waving a rally towel or anything, but that's still in me. But I also got to experience it, as a part of this professional family. And here's the other thing too, guys. I don't get a playoff share. It'd be cool if I did, but. That's life-changing stuff for some people, right? There are people on staff who, that playoff share when you win a World Series is life-changing money. And you see how much it means to them, how much it means to these players, not just the money side of it, but they're forever World Series champions, right? And it's, it was incredibly special to be a part of, and to see the community rally around the Rangers the way they did. After about 6 years of, frankly, 6 years of irrelevance and maybe a lot of indifference and apathy, it was cool to get a reminder that, DFW cares about baseball still.
And this may be a softball question. Obviously, there's a huge difference between that 2023 team and the 2024 team that we witnessed last year. Do you believe that was a World Series hangover, bad luck, a mix of both, or was it deeper than that? Because I think full expectations, we're going to talk about the 2025 squad. There's high expectations in the American League that they could go back to where they were just 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. And, I guess that the hangover can be interpreted a lot of different ways. I don't think that there was complacency. I don't think that there was an arrogance that clouded, the focus. I think for some guys, because there were some physical things, you play until November 1st and you have an abbreviated offseason. And, we had guys who were playing through some stuff, down the stretch in September, October, and, through that Game 5 win on November 1st. I think there were some physical things that maybe got in the way. Am I crazy to think that there isn't a player who, hey, you won the World Series, you celebrate? And it's not just like the rest. There are a lot of obligations, a lot of engagements, a lot more on your schedule. It's easy to say, hey, maybe I won't hit today because I got this World Series thing, and hey, we just won the World Series. I'm sure I don't know. I'd be silly to say that, it didn't impact a single player. I just think more of it was they just could not stay healthy from April 1st on, when Josh Young was hit by a Phil Maton pitch, and he didn't miss the rest of the year. He missed right up until the trade deadline, but he wasn't the same guy when he came back, and then eventually got shut down. And no Jacob deGrom until the end of the year, and then Adolis Garcia played, but it was clear Adolis Garcia was not healthy. Marcus Semien had a down year. You basically had no Evan Carter. He was dealing with a back thing that got in the way of his production, and then he eventually was shut down. And then there just wasn't much of a consistent effort from the bullpen outside of the 8th and 9th innings. They were great. If they had a lead through 7 innings, David Robertson, Kirby Yates, they were lights out. But you guys know it's not like starters always go the first 7 innings. And if you need to bridge it, or maybe you're starting to have a great outing, but you're still in the game, they didn't have the guys to keep it close or protect leads in those middle relief roles. So it was probably, I guess, to add to the question, or maybe, you also ask, and people did, was 23 a fluke? And I don't think it was. I don't think that, that would be a fair assessment. But there were guys who they had the best year of their career to date in 23, and they really struggled in 24. And I think a lot of the questions are, who are these guys going to be in 25? And maybe they lean more towards the 23 version. And you're like, no, it wasn't a fluke. 24 was the fluke. If too many of them lean towards the 24 version, then it's like, I don't know if I like the word fluke, but they flash in the pan, took advantage of guys having great years, which still counts the same. But I know that, there is a thought, like you mentioned, that this is not a team that's just going to go away, and they had a down year last year, but they're going to be right back in the thick of things this year.
Well, after the World Series, one of the things that kind of affected their ability to reinforce the roster and go out and sign some people was this TV deal situation that has kind of impacted a lot of different teams in baseball for a couple of years now. So the Rangers just inked a deal with Victory Plus, a streaming deal. Tell us anything you know about that. Does it affect your day-to-day in any way? And is it seen as a huge positive going forward as far as knowing where the TV situation is?
Yeah. So from a financial standpoint, which is obviously what fans care about here in DFW, I'm not smart enough to understand the X's and O's of it. I've been told that, ultimately the Rangers feel like this is going to be more lucrative than their TV arrangement with Bally's, which, is no longer, I guess, FanDuel Sports or whatever. I think what's really cool is that, or first, what sucked was that a lot of Rangers fans couldn't watch the Rangers because of the Bally distribution mess. If you had DirecTV, you couldn't watch the Rangers because the streaming option on MLB.TV was blacked out locally, right? So, I don't think there was a legal way for someone to do that. And I don't think the Bally app was necessarily available to everyone. There were some weird things there. The cool thing about Victory Plus is that anyone can watch, or the Rangers' new setup, which includes Victory Plus, anyone can watch the Rangers wherever they are. If you're out of market and you need to stream it, then MLB.TV, just like you've been able to in the past. If you guys want to watch a Rangers game, bam. If you're in market and you don't have one of the carriers, then Victory Plus is your option, streaming. And then if you've got one of the several carriers, then it's just, the old-fashioned, use the controller, turn on the channel, and you're good to go. I think the model for sports consumption, not including football, because it's obviously unique in a lot of ways, is evolving, and we're going to see a lot of changes over the next few years. And I think teams and leagues are going to figure out what is most lucrative and what's most profitable. Is it taking full ownership and control like the Rangers are doing, and creating, secondary and tertiary content that can live behind a paywall or that can help, generate revenue, whatever it might be. I think having a carrier, cable, satellite distributor, as well as the streaming avenue, is still, makes a lot of sense right now, because while there are a lot of cord cutters and the younger generation seems more in tune with streaming, there's still a lot of people who aren't. And, it's a marketing tool. It's a marketing piece to be able to have your games available. And the Rangers have lost that, or had lost that. And then as far as my role, I'm going to be doing the pre and post on TV now, which is fun. But I think what's really cool is that, it's given us an opportunity to take a step back and reimagine the way we want the broadcast to go. And here's the reality, guys. I'm 35. I would say that, I don't know, rare is the right word, but I certainly, I'm probably in the minority of 35-year-olds who love this game, right? I'm not talking about like, I knew who Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani is, but like, I love baseball. The younger generation just doesn't seem to be as engaged in this sport. And I think that we can go into why. There are a lot of reasons, some that we can control, some that, maybe above our pay grades. But what we really want to do is make the broadcast fun. We don't need to do the 3 keys to the game so that someone can say, oh, first key, score more runs. Second key, score fewer runs. Third key, don't commit any errors, right? Like, That's not fun. That sucks. And we're doing it because it got sold. No. We're wiping the slate clean. We'll sell stuff, but it's going to be fun. We want to be engaging. And I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off. That's not for me to say. We're certainly going to try. But I just think that it's time for baseball to really lean into this being a platform of entertainment. And it doesn't mean you trick it up and do gimmicks and stuff. That you can enjoy the game and talk about it in an entertaining and fun way without being wild and crazy. But like, you also got to be in touch with what a 13-year-old likes and what a 23-year-old likes and what a 30-year-old likes, and try blend all that together along with the fans who are of an older generation. That's not easy to do, but that's what we're going to try and do.
So it was a tale of 2 weekends with the two leagues, NBA and NHL. And NHL received rave reviews for the Four Nations stuff, and obviously the NBA was left with, I would say, it would be mixed reviews, mostly negative as far as the slam dunk contest, the 3-point contest, the stuff that with Chris Paul and Giannis just throwing the balls away, and the obstacle course, and of course the All-Star game, which is largely, I think, 14 minutes on the court, was played basketball, and the rest was like a concert. It's wide open for Major League Baseball. Like, it feels like it's right there for the grabbing, and I think you just have to have your finger on the pulse. And something you mentioned is just finding a way to grab that young fan. It may not be just an attention span thing, because I think a lot of the younger generation gets a bad rap for not being able to be engaged with I think it's more of the fact that there is a safeguarding of traditions and making sure things are done a certain way by the older fans without, a little bit of the gatekeeping, because you have the older fans that just say they'll be talking down at fans about how the game should be. And I like that you're taking a progressive approach to the broadcast, because it starts there. That's how people consume the game. Yeah.
I mean, that's how I learned the game. That's how I fell in love with the game. And I think it's a privilege, and it's a responsibility to have a microphone, whether it's broadcasting a Rangers game, what you guys are doing, talking about baseball in any platform, any forum. And I don't take that lightly. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there are a lot of ways you can engage fans. I think, baseball is finally slowly starting to do things like the pitch clock, which, whether you like it or not, I mean, I think the results show and talking to fans show that it was necessary. And I think in terms of the NBA and the NHL, it's interesting because the NHL has definitely won this weekend, but the NBA is far superior. I think all-star games suck in general, other than baseball. Baseball is the only one where, they give half a crap. But why has the Four Nations been a success? Because it means a lot to these guys. Why is the all-star game not? Because these guys don't care. Right. And I do think, to that end, that is a challenge that baseball has. It's not that these guys don't care, but it's 162 games, and we all love baseball, right? But if we like just got together tonight, like, hey, have you heard of this baseball sport? It seems pretty cool. I like it. You like it? You like it too? Hey, let's start a league. Cool. How many games? We wouldn't say 162. We wouldn't get close to that, right? And I don't know how baseball gets out of that, but they've got to figure out that you got to look at some of these things not as bugs, but as features. And the one thing that I can't get out of my head, I don't know how baseball can use 162 games as a feature. And let's say they cut it to 154. That makes no difference. All right. They lose 8 games. That's not changing anything. How do you make the games matter to the fans? How does a random game on a Tuesday night in July matter to a fan if it's not against a division rival or something? It's tough. It's not easy to do. But that's why it's got to be fun. It's got to be engaging. Hey, we have 2 players on the Rangers who, and they're the best of friends, but they go about their business in 2 totally different ways. One is Corey Seager. Corey Seager, other than his game 1 of the World Series home run when he showed some emotion, he can hit a big home run in the regular season, and you're barely going to see him show any emotion. Adolis Garcia plays the game with so much flair and passion, and he is very dramatic in his gesturing, but he's having fun. It's not, knocking the opposition or any of that. They both can exist, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. Corey Seager is behaving how he behaves because that's him. Corey is a laser-focused, locked-in guy. He's not the guy that's going to, Junior Caminero in and throw his bat up to the moon. Adolis, has more of that flair to him, and they both can exist. And, I think that allowing those personalities to show, it doesn't have to be just because Corey Seager doesn't smile doesn't mean he hates what Adolis Garcia does. He doesn't. Everyone needs to be themselves. And I think the more personality, the more you can allow players to be players and people to show their personality, maybe that helps. I don't know. But I do wonder, and maybe you guys have thoughts, like how do you work around that 162 game obstacle in terms of engaging fans on a nightly basis in a long, long season?
It's very tough. I mean, Devin, I'll let you take the lead on that because, I like the rule changes. We've been very positive on the pitch clock, and maybe there were reservations, but there has to be a way to grip the younger fan because there is a certain obligation as baseball fans to pass on that fandom so it exists well past us, because I feel like people in our lives, we can all think about the person that connected with us, about what made us love the game of baseball, whether it's sitting and showing us how to score or watching the game with us, listening to the radio, that built a connection with us. And it feels like there's a gap right now because it feels like there is an older generation that is gatekeeping some of that fandom because they don't want the change. So I don't know. Devin, I'll take the lead on that if you want.
Well, the only thing, I think the length of the season is a good point because I think that's probably the number one issue going on, and that might not be let go of. But if you're going to keep it that way, I wonder if there's a way to make the first half of the season mean something. Like we see, say, in the Atlantic League, like we have the Long Island Ducks out here, and there's like a first half winner that, there's a reward for that. Like it has to be more meaningful throughout the season. So maybe that makes some of the early games a little more impactful for people, where there's a first half and a second half, or you divide it up even more, and there's some meaning behind each half or each quarter of the season. I don't know. It's
Devin, I'll tell you, one of my broadcast partners, a guy named Mike Bassick, who, former pitcher, pitched for the Mets. And he sometimes has all these random ideas. And sometimes I just like, I tune him out before he even opens his mouth. And years ago, he said things like, we were actually doing a minor league game on TV. The Rangers used to broadcast some of their AA games, like 5 a year. And we were doing it. And he's like, why don't they do this 2-half thing in the majors? Like, Mike, stop it. Like they do that because there's so much roster turnover, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, all right. And then that night he called me on his way home. He's like, no, I think this has legs. And I heard him out. And I've been an adopter of that. I don't know. We know that baseball is not the first sport to adopt change, and it's not easy to get change made. It's like, trying to get a bill passed between the players and the owners right now. But that is a legitimate thing that I have thought long and hard about. People ask a lot of questions. Well, what about the trade deadline? Figure it out. If you have 2 trade deadlines, maybe you have 1 and there's more strategy. Well, what happens if a team wins both divisions? Well, then you give the second playoff spot to like the next bet. There are a lot of ways you can. There are people. Maybe not you guys. Maybe you guys are way smarter than I am. There are people way smarter than me that can figure out some of these things. That is the only way. And the thing I think about too is the fan. I think that you want to have fans engaged for as wide of a period as possible, right? If you were to, take every calendar day of the season, 183 days, I think, let's forget spring training. You want as many fan bases to wake up and feel engaged for as many of those days as possible. Well, sometimes it's tough. It's tough in the NFL. I know I can ramble. I'll try and make this concise. In the NFL, if your team sucks, you want to know something? You're probably pumped up about whatever quarterback you want your team to draft on Saturday. True. And you might draft that quarterback and your franchise might change like that. Yep. In the NBA, you might suck, and I know there's a lottery, but maybe you end up getting Luka Doncic, and my heart is still broken by that, guys. We don't need to talk anymore about that. But you might get that guy that is going to totally change the trajectory. You could in baseball. I think we know that one player is not going to make nearly as much of a difference as a superstar in the NBA or a quarterback in the NFL. But let's say you do maybe get that guy. It might take 3 years, 4 years before they get to the majors. And the other thing is there's not as much fluency with college baseball as there is with college football and college basketball. So it's not like fans are as pumped. And so if you're sitting there and your team sucks and it's May 2nd, and maybe you're not a 7-year-old kid who thinks like, hey, we could win the World Series this year. We know that there are teams who don't have a chance, right? But you still go into the year like, hey, anything can happen, right? The Giants, a few years ago, they won over 100 games. No one expected that. The Rangers in 23 won the World Series. I don't think many people expected that. It can happen. But the minute you're like 10 games back or 10 games under on May 2nd, you're like, it's done. It's done. And you've still got the rest of May, June, July, August, September before the season ends, and you probably don't care much. All right, 2 half season. Maybe your team gets out of it in May. All right, you're still interested because we got that second half to prepare for. I want to. Is Wyatt Langford? Is he going to get better? Is Anthony Volpe going to get better? All right. Second half starts. Everyone's got a chance. That 2020 season, guys, the Rangers were awful, but they were like 14-14 to start that 60-game season. And then I'm in my head, I don't think they won another game the rest of the year. I mean, they won like a few, but like, think about it. I mean, they had a chance, and then, they lost it quickly, but like, it can happen. And in an 82-game season or 81-game season, yeah, I mean, it can be more engaging. Let's start our own league and do this. Let's lobby and, go to the league offices. You're closer to league offices than I am. I mean, that's the only thing to me that makes sense with how to realistically work around this.
Yeah, I mean, at any given time, we watch teams that are horrendous, and then we'll be the same for 2025, go on stretches where they win 7 of 8 for whatever reason, because it's baseball. But we'll get back to that. You mentioned Wyatt Langford, and you did talk about Evan Carter, and there are obviously 2 important pieces to what the Rangers are looking to do this year. Let's start with Evan Carter with the back issues. You alluded to it. Do you believe he can get back to that 2023 star we saw? Because personally, I am indebted to it because he's a keeper in my Dynasty Fantasy Baseball League. But he was exciting, man. During October of that year, he felt like he was going to be a transcendent star that baseball can get behind.
It's a great question. Evan Carter is going to be a really good player. I don't know. Is he going to be a star? Right. There's a difference, right? Really good players can, be inducted into a team's Hall of Fame. A star, is a guy that maybe gets some votes for the Hall of Fame and maybe even gets inducted. Right? And that's a lot to put on a young kid. But like, I think Evan Carter can be a really good player where you're like, yeah, this guy's additive. He's a guy we like on our team. His plate discipline is too advanced to not be. The athleticism, as long as he can stay healthy, is too strong to not be, because he's one of these guys who can play center field in a way that he doesn't have to be the world's greatest hitter to be a 3-4 win player, right? But I do think that he's got the ability to be a top of the order type hitter. That he's got power. He's developed that. I think he could be a 20 to 25 home run guy who gets on base 37% of the time if things come together. The question is, first of all, can he hit lefties? We don't know. His minor league career was interrupted by injuries, and the sample size isn't large enough, especially at the upper levels of the minors, right? We don't care. Does he get it? Some lefties in A-ball. That's not going to tell as much of a story as, hey, what about, once he gets to AA, AAA? And it was so amazing in that 23 season, he came up in September, and then at October, he barely faced lefties. I mean, that Houston team, the Rangers went to 7 games with, didn't have a lefty in their bullpen. And the only lefty they really threw was Framber Valdez. And the Rangers in game 6, I think, or 7, whichever one he started, it was Javier in game 7. Whichever start Framber Valdez made, they knocked him out, earlier. And so I think Evan only maybe faced him once. And then last year, he really struggled against lefties. You can be 2 for 30. I think it was close to that against lefties and have some hard hit balls. There just wasn't a lot of it. But like, one of the sad things about Evan last year, forget the fact the Rangers stunk. He lost a year in a low pressure environment once they did stink to just face lefties and grow. That's the only way we're going to find out. And I'm curious to see how they handle him this year. But, I think you automatically lower the ceiling a little bit if you become a platoon player. And I think that's the question is he might not ever be as good against lefties as he is against righties, but can he at least be in the lineup and be an on-base guy? Maybe he's not going to have as high of an average. You know, I know some people think that in that situation, your approach should be more aggressive and more all or nothing, and sell out for power because you don't feel as comfortable. Other people will say, hey, you've got great plate discipline. Why don't you lean on that? You know, you try, you know, maybe you have a lower slug, higher on base, whatever it might be. Can he figure out some advantage against lefties? That's a big question. I do think, though, that the aptitude and the work ethic, if he can stay healthy, gives me a lot of confidence that you're gonna enjoy having him on your fantasy team.
So with Wyatt Langford, I did listen to your appearance on Shannon RJ from 105.3 The Fan, and you were talking glowingly about Wyatt Langford, about just the skill set you see on a daily basis. What do you think is the next progressive step for him, for fans to expect to see in a full season that maybe he's acclimated? Because I think there was a little bit of the growing pains the first 2 months of the season, but by the end of the season, he looked pretty comfortable.
Yeah, he's going to be a star. I try, as I've gotten older, more realistic and throwing around superlatives. He's a star, and I don't know if it pops fully this year or next year, but he's something else. There are a lot of comparisons. I hate even bringing this up, but there are comparisons to Mike Trout because he's a thick guy who runs like the wind and has power. And I was, come on, it's Mike Trout, right? And I know Mike Trout's a shell of himself now, or, not on the, but like, it's Mike Trout. Guys, he's pretty good. I mean, this guy, and here's what was telling to me. It's very easy for me to sit and watch a guy win the player of the month of September and be like, wow, he's a good player. Like any dip ass can do that. Jose Trevino was with the Rangers, came up with the Rangers, and have a really good relationship with Jose. And I remember when the Yankees played the Rangers in that series, Wyatt hit a walk-off grand slam. But before that, and it was the first game of before the first game of the series, I was talking to Jose. We're just talking about, things, and it wasn't really even talking about baseball. It's like, hey, Wyatt Langford is going to be good. And I was like, why do you say that? And not that I was in disbelief, but I know Jose's a catcher. I know he works hard. He's watching film. He's like, he's just different. The way his approach, you can tell with his swing, the way the ball sounds, like he is, I'm telling you, he is going to be special. And it wasn't like at that point Wyatt was having this monster September. It wasn't like, his season numbers or anything special. And Jose's take on that was not the only one I heard from someone outside of the Rangers organization. And that even when he was struggling, there were people like, no, he's going to be fine. This guy is going to be really good. And he's boring, like in a good way. Like he's not like a boring person, but there's like no concern, like he's going to get distracted or he's going to like really lean into being like a professional athlete. Like, he is a simple kid from Florida who likes to hunt, and he likes to just hit the ball a long ways, and he can run like the wind, and he wants it. Like he works his ass off. Wyatt Langford, I think, is going to be one of baseball's stars. And I think if we don't see that in full this year, we're going to see steps towards that.
It's interesting that you use the word kind of simple kid from Florida, because I think of Jacob deGrom as a Met fan. He used to come out to a Simple Man as his song to the mound. I don't know if he still does that in Texas. Okay. Yep. It broke my heart, obviously, as a Met fan and just a big Jacob deGrom fan to see him leave. I think there was some of us here in New York that thought he'd be a lifelong Met. But now, after being over that heartbreak, I just want to see the guy on the mound again, because even though he's not pitching for my team, you just want to watch him. Like, I got to watch him so many nights in a Met uniform, and it was just appointment viewing. And I want to see that again, even if he's in a different uniform. So he's pitched 9 games since signing that big contract with Texas in 2 years. What is the expectation, the realistic expectation for Jacob? Is there a lot of optimism right now going into spring training? Like, how has it been so far?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who think this guy's winning the Cy Young this year. And I think the thought is, hey, we don't know how long this UCL is going to last, but we feel good about it lasting, for a couple years. And maybe this year it's the strongest it will be, right? Because it's so fresh and new. This guy, I've never I watch a lot of bullpens during spring training, and a lot of them kind of look more or less the same because I don't, I'm not smart enough to tell the difference, between certain things. And obviously certain guys, it feels a little different. But like, I don't know, Garrett Cole's one of my favorite pitchers in the world. I just love that guy. But I don't know that like his bullpen would, really like excite me. Jacob deGrom's bullpens are like, it is. I mean, he's this big guy who moves so fluidly, throws 7 million miles an hour and puts it where he wants with this wipeout slider. And you pair that, he's got this like naturally intimidating presence. If he can stay healthy, this guy is one of the reasons, it's got to be one of the reasons why a lot of these projection models are so high on the Rangers. Because it's one thing to have a really good rotation. It's another thing to have a really good rotation with a dude, right? And he's one of those guys. And I'll tell you too, guys, obviously there was a reputation when he left the Mets, whether it was about toughness or how much he cares or all that. I just think, and I don't mean this, when my family moved to America, they lived in New York. I have a lot of love for New York, so this is not a shot at New York. But not everyone fits in New York, right? And you mentioned, you think simple man from Florida. Jacob deGrom, we were actually talking about this today. If Jacob didn't have internet at his house in the offseason, he would not care one bit. The New York scene, I think he appreciated his time with the Mets. I think he loved his time for what it was, but he's just not a New York guy. I think that, some people say, well, he didn't go back to the Mets. He wasn't tough enough to deal with New York. I mean, I don't know how you want to define that, but like, it's his life. And why does he have to go back somewhere where that's not his thing. He's not, he fits in tech. There are a lot of guys who would choose New York over Texas, the Yankees over the Rangers, maybe most guys, right? I mean, it's the Yankees, the Mets, even though the Mets don't have the history of the Yankees, it's New York City. That's amazing. But not every guy. And I just don't think it was a fit there in that regard. He's been a great teammate. He does care. And I think that I think there's a lot of motivation on his part to show people that the contract was not a mistake and that he is a bad man. And I'll tell you what, guys, I don't know how much he would ever admit to caring about legacy. I think because of the injuries and just the interesting trajectory of his career, you could make an argument that there's not the longevity for the Hall of Fame. I think that's silly because some of these counting numbers are just changing dramatically with the way pitchers are used, but you can't keep a guy out with 3 Cy Youngs. I think there's a chip on his shoulder. Just watching last year play out as he was getting closer and closer to coming back. And so far, I just hope the guy can stay healthy because he is so fun to watch.
I mean, it's interesting. The news cycle moves so fast here in New York, and I'm trying to bring myself back to the time when they moved on. It felt like it was, and Devin can correct me, he's more in tune with the Mets fandom, but it felt like it was a split that wasn't met with any hard feelings. I mean, I'm sure there's circles of Met fans that will say what they say, that he was oft injured and they didn't want him back. But I feel like if you talk to a Met fan, and I have a lot of close Met fans in my life, they think about their time with Jacob deGrom on the mound very fondly. And I don't know. I feel like that is the consensus. I'm not sure about you, Devin.
Yeah, I think there were some hard feelings at first from some circles, and there's crazy fans in every fan base that take it a little too far. But even if you were one of those people that your feelings were a little hurt that he left, I think if you are not now rooting for him after he had to go through another one of these injuries, you're kidding yourself. Because if you ever were truly a Jacob deGrom fan, you're cheering for this guy. It's not like he's playing for the Philadelphia Phillies, like in our division, arch rivals, right? So Steve, I wouldn't correct you on that. I do think there's some people that will always be a little bitter, and I think there were some crazy people back then that, again, take it too far. But yeah, I think the majority of Met fans, if you ask them to be honest, are probably cheering him on this year.
And I'd also add you guys,
he's fantastic. Like, it's good for baseball if he's on the hill.
100%. Yep.
I'd also add Jacob's not like Mr. Media guy, like he's shy. And so, and we know that the writers can very much control a narrative. And I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but writers are human beings. There's a reason why certain guys maybe get more or less consideration for the Hall of Fame, right? Feelings can get hurt, or you can massage some feelings. And Jacob it was never a priority for him to make sure he was in front of the media whenever they wanted and make friends in that way. That's not, and he's still this shy guy. I mean, he's from my vantage point, great to be around. I'm not a writer. And the New York media's there. It's a great media contingent because you're never going to get a shortage of opinions. But from a player standpoint, I mean, I don't know that he made friends there because just his natural disposition. And I think there were some narratives that were maybe pushed by writers who wished that Jacob gave them more time or made them feel better about themselves. I don't know, but there were things that they don't match up at all with my 2 years with Jacob deGrom and talking to some of his teammates. I mean, his teammates love him. Like unprompted, they talk about the impact Jacob deGrom's had on him. And that's just not what I gathered was from what had been reported, especially over his last couple years with the Mets when things were like, is he hurt? Is he healthy and stopping and starting? And then there's like he and Scherzer and did they get all of that stuff? Like, I don't know. Maybe he's just a different lease on life in a different area.
And it looks like he's growing his hair back out, which, I mean, that's dangerous for the rest of the league too. So I saw a little bit of the hair flowing out the back of the hat a little bit.
It's a little pay. Right now he looks a little bit like Patrick Dempsey. He said it's not going to get as long as it did like back in his Mets heyday, but we'll see how long he keeps the curls.
So as far as new additions for the Rangers, Jock Pederson and Jake Berger joined the lineup, and obviously we need an upgrade at the DH over Grossman and Jankowski's production last season. How do you see that playing out, and how do you like the fit so far as spring training taking hold?
Well, I'll tell you what, just Devin, since you're a Mets fan, Travis Jankowski's like one of Rangers fans love this guy, and I'm so sad that he's not back with the club. I mean, I know he is who he is as a player, but he's the best, and our fans. I mean, you win a World Series and then fans love everyone who's a part of it. And he had some big games, but he's like a fan favorite in a couple of years. I don't know if Mets fans felt the same way about him, but Rangers fans were certainly happy to have him. I know he wasn't there for a long time, but
he's one of those guys that he just kind of wins over a fan base really quickly. And I have to double check this. So if I'm wrong and anyone's listening, don't get too mad at me, but he might be like a New Yorker, as far as college. I feel like he went to Stony Brook. I'm going to check that. Yeah, so there we go. So he's a New Yorker as well for his college time.
He's not just a New Yorker; he's a Long Island guy, like all of us. I mean, that's a certain sect right there.
He took Stony Brook to the college. They beat LSU in a regional and took him to a super regional. I mean, he didn't just go there. I mean, they made some waves.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are bigger upgrades, and I think we sometimes look at it like very linearly, like, oh, we need a first baseman, we need a short, we need this, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it works out that way too. But the Rangers needed guys who could hit right-handed pitching. They needed guys who could hit fastballs, and they needed power. And, a big difference between the 23 and 24 Rangers was just an absence of power. And Jock Pederson crushes righties. Jake Berger is a guy that, he's not a high on base guy, but he's a high slug guy. And the Rangers have some high on base guys. And so it can balance out a little bit. The Nathaniel Lowe, again, he helped win a World Series for the Rangers, won a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger. He's a good player. He doesn't fit the typical first baseman's mold. He's more of a lower slug, high on base guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that was I don't want to say an easy spot, like out of disrespect for Nathaniel, but it was a logical spot where the Rangers could maybe boost their power. And so, I think it was a tough decision, but I think it's one they made for that reason. I mean, they could basically double their power production at that position. So, I think that's going to be a big need. And, it was really odd, guys. The Rangers all year just couldn't hit the fastball. I mean, it didn't matter. We're not just talking about like top rail elite fastball. We're just talking about fastballs. And they really, because of that, or a chicken or the egg here, but they were not good when they got ahead of the count. And what do we always hear about? Hey, you get ahead of the count as a hitter, you're putting yourself in a position to succeed. The difference between 1-0 and 0-1, or just taking advantage of 2-0, 3-1. Go back and look at the numbers. The Rangers were awful in hitters counts last year, and probably because they just couldn't hit the fastball. And I think that was a big point of emphasis this offseason.
So you alluded to some of the projections earlier about how the projections seem to love the Rangers this year. Pacoda released their projections. The Rangers have a 75% chance of making the playoffs according to them. Two-part question here. As far as the AL West, the division, who do you see this year? There's been a lot of movement in that division as far as free agent signings and maybe people leaving as well. Who do you see as the biggest threat to the Rangers? And then just the AL as a whole, do you still think everyone's chasing the Yankees even without Juan Soto there?
First of all, Giancarlo Stanton, he's got 2 elbows hurt now. What's
Double
the deal?
elbow. Double elbow issue, yeah.
What is going on? So I'll start with the second one. I think, Juan Soto's a great player, but we've talked about, one player does not make a team, and it certainly doesn't break a team. There are maybe certain guys who mean more to the culture, to the fabric. I don't know if that's Juan Soto. He is obviously, we were talking about Wyatt Langford maybe being a star. Juan Soto, go down as one of the 10 greatest hitters of all time, right? Like, let's not, I don't want to conflate any of that. But I do like some of the moves the Yankees made. If Max Fried can pitch in New York, and some guys can, some guys can't, but if he can, wow, that adds to the rotation. If Marcus Stroman decides to get his head out of his tush, you got 6 starters, right? And that's huge. You might not use 6 right away, but they're not going to all stay healthy. Adding Devin Williams to the bullpen. I like some of the moves that were made. Are they the clear-cut favorite? Guys, it is amazing to me that Baltimore has everything that they have and just like, we're going to try and win with like a average starting rotation, right? Like Baltimore, it's on a tee for them to be the best team in the American League. As a matter of fact, when the Rangers played the Orioles in the playoffs, I was like, thank gosh we played them this year, because or not. I don't know how are these guys going to lose, right? So, but I don't want to discount the Orioles. Grayson Rodriguez, I think, is good. I'm not as big of a believer in Zach Eflin at that level, what they need from him. There's no one in the Central that I think, I'm not saying they can't be good, but like that level, yeah, I mean, to me, it's the Yankees and the Orioles, frankly. I think the American League is not nearly as strong as the National League when you look at like top-heavy type teams, right? I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Oh,
no, I definitely feel the same way. And you're preaching to the choir about the Orioles stuff. We've
Yeah.
been on here every single week, just like, I mean, first of all, the logjam they have with the prospects and the embarrassment of riches that they have over there, and the fact that they let Corbin Burns go. I mean, they tried. I mean, they got to give him credit. They did offer him something substantial. He wanted to leave, but what they did the deadline is the most egregious thing last year of what they did and gave up for Trevor Rogers and wound up not helping. And they're a worse team by a lot going into the season, where the window was cracked open. They were ready to kick it open and take control of the American League, because as you mentioned, it's wide open. There's a reason why the Yankees were able to get to the World Series last year. I'm not delusional. I'm not naive as a fan. I understand they had an easy path with the AL Central and they played those teams. It's open for any team. Now the Red Sox jump in here with the Bregman signing. It's open for another team to grab it. That's why I think Texas isn't favorable to everybody, because if everything breaks right and if deGrom is leading the charge, dude, it's wide open for any team that wants to make a move. And the Rangers did every bit of trying to be competitive this year. So as a fan of that team, you have to be happy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the Mariners are like Orioles light reversed, right? Like they just, for the last 3 years, I know they traded for a Rosarena and they've made some minor moves, but like, they were linked to Trey Turner and they've been linked to this hitter and that hitter. They've got a rotation that like, it doesn't matter who, like sometimes you face a team and you're looking ahead, you're like, gosh, I hope Garrett Cole pitches on Sunday, because that means we're going to miss him this year. It doesn't matter who's pitching for the Mariners. You're screwed. Like, you're not getting a fun matchup at all. And that is, I mean, it is ridiculous. And they've got a really good bullpen. The Julio Rodriguez decline is a big mystery. I mean, they need that guy back, but they just sit there and like, wait, you don't want to add a bat? Like you guys should be the best team in the West. What? Like, it's just, but because to me, they are the biggest threat. I mean, you just can't ignore that rotation. And what if Julio kind of, gets his head out of the clouds and starts being Julio again? But I I hate the Astros with a passion. They've won the division every single year since 2017 outside of the COVID shortened year, right? So I can't just write them off. I just think losing Kyle Tucker, he's really good. Alex Bregman's declining, but like, I just think, he was such a part of that culture and the winning culture. And maybe he'll help build that in Boston, but it almost was like he was more valuable in Houston because I think he's declining as a player in a lot of ways. But I guess I can't rule out Houston. I guess what I'd say is Oakland's the team that I think could surprise some people. I think Oakland is going to be good. Are they going to make the playoffs? I don't know that I'd say that, but they're kind of 1 year away from that 2-year stretch where they're like competitive again before they like sell everyone off. Lawrence Butler, I think, is if he can build off of his second half, he's going to be a name more people know about this year. And I think Oakland's going to be feisty. The Athletics. I can't say Oakland. I think the Athletics are going to be feisty and make it challenging for the Rangers within the division. Not to threaten for the division, but just there's not going to be like an easy series when you play the Athletics. But yeah, let's be honest. It's not like the most daunting division, and it is very much there for the taking.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't dogpile on the Astro hate, because I personally am part of the Astro hater club, and I will be for the rest of my life. What's the vibe there in Texas about obviously them breaking it down and watching what they're doing? There's talks about them being the worst outfield in the American League right now, and you can make that case right now as far as if Yordan Alvarez isn't right, and there's been the knee stuff that's come out that's pretty troubling. The Astro, we watched it last year. Devin pronounced them dead 45 times last year, and they came out of the woodwork and found a way to do it. Yeah. Are they dead though? Are they closing the window? Is that it? Can we shutter the doors and move on from them at this point?
They're dying. Maybe like their farm system sucks. Here's the thing, guys. You think about like how dynastic they've been, and I hate them, and we can talk about trash cans all we want, but the reality is, their run has been remarkable.
Unbelievable.
But because of the scandal, they have had, say the Patriots. I don't know, that's maybe I shouldn't say that, but the Patriots went through this incredible era, and you can credit Brady all you want, and sure, but they had one head coach throughout the entire time, right? And how you want to distribute the credit, I'd probably divide more of the pie up to Brady than Belichick, but Belichick played a role, right? And what if they had 3 different coaches during that time? Because of the scandal, the Astros have now had, they're on their 3rd manager in Joe Espada. They're on their 3rd GM, plus they allowed Jeff Bagwell to play with his toys for, a few months in an offseason and signed Jose Abreu for no reason and paid Rafael Montero way too much money. It's just not, in such a short period of time, which it is, they've had a lot of turnover, and it's tough to keep making the right decisions with the front office and the manager. And I don't love Joe Espada. I don't know that Dana Brown knows what he's doing at that level. Their farm system is not good. But when you've won it as much as they've won it, the division, there's a mental edge there. I just think a part of that mental edge was represented by Alex Bregman. I really think that he's kind of a cocky SOB, but like in a way where you would love that guy in your team. I hate the Astros. Alex Bregman can play for, maybe not for $40 million, but Alex Bregman can play for my team any day. So yeah, Devin, I'm with you, man. I've pronounced them dead a lot. I think they're dying. I do think that this is going to be the year they don't win the division, but almost because the Rangers are coming off such a bad year and the Mariners just find ways to get in their own way. Like, it's not like there's a Yankees in this division. Maybe we have a different tone, in July if one of these teams have taken off, but I definitely think the ceiling for the Mariners, the ceiling for the Rangers, way higher than the Astros. If the Astros win this division, it's because the Rangers and Mariners were disappointing, and they were just there to take it. I don't see the upside with the Astros the way that, we've had in years past.
And Jared, I mean, amazing point about the inconsistency with the front office and the management, because I think they stunted the growth. I mean, they had a big window. Obviously, they've been competitive. They've been in the ALCS how many years and winning divisions. But I think if they would have had a consistency, and obviously you can chicken or the egg situation as far as the cheating, if they weren't caught, they would keep a system in place. But you're now seeing the crops that have been planted in the ground, and the soil's rotten. They're not producing the same product they were with the replacement players, and the guys that are next up, they're not ready for the guys to be leaving. They were okay with Correa going. They're okay with Springer going because they had the guy that was next up. And now you're seeing the results of 2, 4, 6 years ago of them not really scouting players and assessing them. You mentioned the Abreu thing. They made some bad decisions, and I think it's coming to roost for them.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, when the Rangers were really good in 10 and 11 and whatnot, people said, well, it's tough to have a good farm system when you're good because you're constantly trading guys. And that's not untrue, but you have a draft every year. You got, first round pick most years and all that stuff. Like, you can be really good and have a really good farm system. And Dodgers kind of an example of that.
Yep.
But yeah, the Astros kind of had that for a little bit, but yeah, they have it. And the way they just terminated scouts for a period of time, that's bit them in the ass. And there are a lot of people around the league who I know are really happy about that, especially in the scouting world, because the Astros kind of took on, like Jeff Lunau kind of took on this, I'm inventing baseball. You guys don't know. I mean, there's just an arrogant way about them. And it seems like some of that arrogance is coming back to bite. It was never going to show itself right away because of all the work they had done to build that unbelievable roster. But now we're starting to see, I mean, like Jeremy Pena is not that good. Give me Anthony Volpe over Jeremy Pena 7 days a week. Like, they're both young shortstop. Jeremy Pena, I know he had that. He was the World Series MVP, the ALCS MVP, and hey, he was great that year. Jeremy Pena is not that good. He's just a guy. He's nothing more. But he was like their dude as a prospect. And maybe Cam Smith, they got from the Cubs will be great. But the depth in their system is non-existent.
So we talked about the bullpen before. Kirby, Yates, and David Robertson are no longer going to put on a Rangers uniform this year. And there's been obviously a conversation about, could a closer by committee approach be the Rangers' best option for 2025? Maybe veteran acquisition Chris Martin, or maybe John Gray. I've seen some rumblings that he could be a reliable closer. What is your thought right now as we sit here February 17th of 2025 as we look for the season to start?
Yeah, how many like World Series contenders go closer by committee? That's true. And I'm not saying that they're not ever in this position on February 17th, but you got to find a guy, right? I mean, it's just that's one of those things. You can match up in the 6th, the 7th, the 8th. We've been dogging on the Mariners. I will say that there was a few years ago, back when Paul Sewald was with the Mariners, they were a team that actually had success. It was the year they made the playoffs. They had success mixing and matching, in the 8th and 9th inning, but it's just so tough to do. And so I think, the Rangers need to find a guy now. Who knows? No one has any clue what the Cardinals are doing, right? Are they trying to win some games? Or are they resetting? And is John Mozeliak in his last year just trying to give a half effort? Because why is Ryan Helsley still with the Cardinals? And maybe there's a fit there. Sadly, I hate this, but the Guardians there's been rumors about Emmanuel Clase because they just don't like paying guys, even though he's on this super team friendly deal. I mean, I hate that for Cleveland, but I don't know if they're going to trade for someone. It seems like guys they could sign. I mean, Robertson, was last man standing there, and there were some thoughts, and Robertson's still a free agent. It just doesn't seem like a reunion's likely. I don't know they're going to sign anyone. So yeah, does Chris Martin emerge? The John Gray wild card. Some people have talked about Kumar Rocker just as a way to help control his innings. I don't think that's the route they're going to go to manage the innings. Or is it a guy like Emiliano Teodo, who's was in the Futures game last year, a young pitcher who I don't think they're going to hand the keys to the 9th inning right away, but maybe if no one's taken charge by June 1, maybe they feel like he'd be ready by then. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about a guy who hasn't pitched in the big leagues, in that role. And they'd ease them in, obviously, but I don't know. And maybe the approach is let's piece it together and let's trade for not Aroldis Chapman specifically, but let's trade for a guy like Aroldis Chapman, in late June or early July, and when guys become available. I don't know, guys. I mean, that's the big question I have. If they had a proven closer, then I'd feel really good about that Pacoda ranking that has the Rangers as the second best team in the American League. But the Rangers. How about this for a crazy nugget? The Rangers have not had the same closer for consecutive years since Joe Nathan back in like 12 and 13. And what I mean by that is so Kirby Yates wasn't the closer on opening day last year, but he very quickly and largely became the closer. And obviously he's not coming back. They've had guys and also finish the year too, I should say. They've had guys end the year as a closer and then start the next year and lose the job in April. I don't count that. They have not had a closer for 2 straight years in over a decade. And it would be nice to change that. They also, they had Emmanuel Clase. They traded him for 1 inning of Corey Kluber.
You mentioned Kumar Rocker there.
The Kluber story, right? The Kluber no-hitter story. You guys familiar? The little nugget. It was, so the Rangers traded for Corey Kluber in 2020. Obviously, right. No fans. So all the giveaways were, not used. Well, the Rangers had Corey Kluber bobblehead giveaway when the Yankees came to town in 2021. Kluber happened to start that game and throw a no-hitter on his bobblehead night in Arlington.
Oh.
Yeah, just adding salt to the wound.
Steve, do you actually, as a Yankee fan, you remember that one?
I remember that they had, I don't remember on the day when he pitched the no-hitter, but I do remember now hearing that story, actually probably from one of the Texas Rangers beat reporter accounts that had approached that. And I can't believe that's 5 years ago at this point. It's wild.
That's rough. It's rough. Kumar Rocker, you mentioned very quickly there as a long shot, as a closer role guy. He came up last year. He very much looked the part. Is he a given for the rotation as we sit here now, or is he going to possibly be the odd man out?
Yeah, he's not a given, I think, because of the inning stuff. There are a lot of different ways, and the Rangers have not said, hey, we're limiting his innings, or they've given a number, and I don't know that they will. They don't need to, right? The minute you give a number, then it's like the countdown's on. But it stands to reason a young kid, I mean, he lives a grown man, he's a young kid who's thrown less than 100 innings over the last 3 seasons, of his baseball life. They're not going to just run him out there for 180 innings. So how do you do that? I don't know. There are a lot of different ways, but I think one way is maybe starting him in AAA if everyone stays healthy, of other candidates in the rotation. And they're in a good position. They have some depth there. Start him in AAA, pitch him once a week. And maybe start him off, 3 innings, a couple starts, 4 innings, a couple starts, 5 innings, where you can do that. You can get away with that in the minor leagues. You don't worry as much about taxing a bullpen there. And then, maybe come mid-May, he comes up. Now, all these plans, especially when it comes to pitching, they get wrecked the minute someone gets hurt, right? And so that could change the trajectory. But if everyone stays healthy, I could see him as the odd man out, just as a way to help limit and control his workload. Because I do think the one thing I believe in now, no matter how many different paths you can take with a guy like Kumar Rocker, I think the one thing I don't like is when a guy doesn't sprint through the finish line of the season. I don't like shutting a guy down in August. I think there's something to be said for a young player to experience being available or potentially being available from opening day through game 162 and getting used to that workload and just that, that grind. And so maybe you shut him down for a couple weeks, in the middle of the season. That's fine. But I don't think the Rangers, especially as a playoff contender, want to be in a position where they're like, it's August 15th and we don't want to touch his innings. Like we've already, gone overboard, for his long-term benefit. So I think they're going to try and avoid that at all costs.
You've mentioned a few of these names I'm going to mention right now. There's a bunch of bounce back candidates on this team this year, whether it be Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien, even a Dane Dunning, Josh Young just being healthy. If you had to pinpoint one guy in that kind of bounce back role that would be the most important to this team's success this year, who would that guy be?
On one hand, I think about Marcus Semien, but I just think Adolis Garcia can be such a dynamic force in the middle of the lineup. And if Marcus Semien just isn't quite 23 Semien, he at least, gives you really good defense at a, up the middle position. And, he'll contribite. Adolis Garcia was really rough last year. And I think that there were some physical things that he was playing through. He's always going to be streaky, right? You're going to have like 3 weeks of Adolis where it's like, geez, it's going to be 3 or 4 pitches, strikeout, see you later. But, he is not a guy who struggles in big situations, late in the game, big moments as we saw in the postseason. And he can be a force. Like he can, there's certain guys who they can win you, 2 games in a series. And he's one of those guys. They missed that last year. I talked about, lacking the power, and his down year was a part of that. They missed that guy. And I maybe some people would disagree and say Semien. I go with Adolis. I think getting the 23 Adolis is more impactful than getting the 23 Semien, because I have more confidence that if Adolis, maybe it's a repeat of last year. I don't know that it's in the middle. I think Adolis is either going to be the guy he was for the 2 or 3 years prior, or it's going to look like last year. Whereas with Semien, I think there's more of an in-between, if that makes sense.
So as we approach the end of our conversation, again, we really appreciate all the time you've given us here. In addition to your broadcasting career, you've made a significant impact off the field through your work with the Sandlot Children's Charity, which you founded back in 2017. Can you tell everybody a little bit about more of that mission of the charity and what drives your passion to support children with physical and intellectual differences and pursuing some athletic opportunities in their area?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you guys for asking about that. I knew that growing up loving sports, I noticed, as actually, to be honest with you guys, it was 9/11. 9/11 was a wake-up call for me, just in understanding the way that sports can really impact a community. And not that erased what happened, but, I remember seeing the way the Yankees and the Mets helped lift the spirits, and just the way, normalcy helped. And I'll never forget, because, the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry was, it was alive then, and it got maybe a little more heated in subsequent years, but seeing Red Sox fans wearing like we love New York shirts, like custom made shirts and support. It was like, it was unreal to, I hate that it happened. Obviously I'm not, but in response to that, just seeing the way that sports can impact people. That's not to say that music or movies or art can. It can. It's just it's what I watch sports. That's what I noticed. And on a much smaller, less significant, severe way, just the way these athletes have a platform and have the ability to use it, and then the way broadcasters do. And it's not, my platform isn't as vast as an athlete's platform, but I do have a platform that a guy that, is an accountant with a 9-to-5 job and doing great work doesn't necessarily have. And I've always wanted to use it. I don't have a family member who was, greatly impacted by, a disability. I was exposed to some people who did at a young age, and was always captivated by their positivity and just their love of life. And it always stuck with me. And I've just always been drawn to, it's amazing people with disabilities that we've had a chance to work with. It's an amazing community of people, different groups, different conditions that I worry about a lot, guys. I worry, did I put on a pound today? And gosh, I stumbled over the way I asked a question in an interview earlier today. It's like, these people have overcome and are dealing with life-changing challenges, and they do it with a smile and with so much positivity, and it's contagious to be around. And sadly, the state of Texas is lacking tremendously in opportunities in athletic programming for people with disabilities. And so our mission is to try and change that. It's also incredibly expensive. You think about, we want to go play basketball and then you go buy some shoes. I know basketball shoes have got crazy expensive, but I can buy a pair of shoes for $100, maybe even less. They'll get the job done and could last me a couple of years. But a wheelchair for wheelchair basketball is going to cost you about $5,000 minimum usually. And so, and the programming, just all of it, for a lot of reasons, obvious, some not so obvious. It's cost prohibitive for families and for some of these kids, and I hate that. And we want to try and be the answer to that, so that these kids and organizations that support these kids don't have a shortage for money, so that these kids can have the same opportunities that the three of us probably had when we were growing up, and so many people around the world not only have but benefit from, both directly and indirectly, from the active part and the joy of playing sports, but also learning skills and building confidence, making friends, and all the things that help you grow as an individual that sports offer an opportunity to provide.
I love
I mean,
it,
I
man. Keep up
will.
the great work with that.
Yeah, I'll
Thank you.
echo that as far as sports. I mean, that's always been my outlet, whether it be playing or coaching or watching. So everyone should have the opportunity to have that as an outlet if that's what they choose. So that's amazing work. So Jared, like Steve said, you've given us a ton of time and we deeply appreciate it. This episode, if anyone wants to know anything about the Rangers, I feel like hopefully they're listening to this. We're going to get you out of here on this question. We've started doing a segment on our show, and by no means is an original. A lot of people do this, but Mount Rushmore of different subjects. We did the Mount Rushmore of role players in baseball over the years. We did the Mount Rushmore of table setters, since it's our name. And we ask our guests specifically about who they're covering. So I'm going to give you a choice. You can even either give us your Mount Rushmore of Texas Rangers all time, or since you grew up a Dallas sports fan, just a Mount Rushmore of all Dallas professional sports players.
Just like as a fan, favorite player type, right?
Well, you can. So Steve and I go through this all the time. You can, however you want to do it. Steve, you know what I'm talking about. Like, this is kind of your viewpoint, right? It doesn't have to necessarily
Absolutely.
be.
It's interpretive to, I guess, for you. If you had to, I guess, have someone come off of a planet, they land on a UFO, and you're like, define Dallas sports to you, who would be the four quintessential guys? Not saying that they're the best athletes that have ever put on a Dallas uniform or a Texas uniform. Who would it be? I guess that's how I would interpret it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Dirk's, that's easy. That's number one. I mean, he's my favorite athlete of all time. And I think that I think he's probably had more of an impact. There's a debate whether it's Dirk or Staubach. Those are probably the two most significant athletes in DFW sports history. So Dirk's easily on there. Staubach's not my lifetime, so I'd feel guilty putting him on there. Thinking in my lifetime, I'll say, I'm person I'm thinking about is Corey Seager. I mean, his home run in Game 1 of the World Series is the most significant moment in Rangers history, and just because. It's not like Dirk hit a buzzer beater when they won in the finals. I mean, a lot of people think about a late fourth quarter driving and one layup against the Heat in part of their comeback in Game 2, but that's not as big of a moment as a home run. I think you make a case that the Brett Hull Stanley Cup clinching goal and Corey Seager's home run are the two biggest single moments in DFW modern sports history. Even though he doesn't have the longevity. Mike Modano's got to be there just because he helped bring hockey to Dallas and to DFW. You can make a case that without Mike Modano, it doesn't catch on. I mean, the Stars got good pretty shortly after they moved. And it's not Canada, it's not New York, but there's a very strong hockey fan base here because of those 90s teams. And I think Mike Modano's the key. So let's go with Mo. Dirk, there's got to be a Cowboy, but I mean, I guess Aikman. I don't. It's tough to separate all of them. I mean, Michael Irvin kind of has the passion and the criminal record too. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to think of this list without including Adrian Beltre, just with how much he's meant, to the DFW sports community. So yeah, let's go Modano, Dirk. Can I leave off I'm not even a Cowboys fan. Can I leave?
You
off
can leave off a Cowboy. Yeah, it's your Mount Rushmore. Yes,
yeah. Let's go Beltre and let's go Seager. The little Rangers slant too. A little Rangers bias.
Complete pivot in another direction. I was watching highlights of that 99 Stanley Cup the other night, obviously, and The
Why?
uniform
That's so random
downgrade.
for you. Why?
Oh, I just love watching old clinching goals, dude. I watch NHL clinching goals, and it wind up like YouTube. My algorithm is so set up where I'm like NHL goals wind up coming up, and those uniforms just popped up on the timeline. Those old school Dallas Stars uniforms, the downgrade that the uniforms are now, the lime electric green compared to that uniform's perfect. The Dallas ones, when they first transitioned from Minnesota, unbelievable.
Guys, I'm also, this is like a random like pet peeve. I miss the white sweaters at home. I don't know. I get it.
I'm a huge fan of the white sweaters at home as well.
Yeah, or just I maybe in football it doesn't mean as much to me because that's always what I've known, other than the Cowboys, of course. But I miss it in the NBA. I appreciate that in the NBA, like it connects with the young fans. You have like 17 different uniforms, and then now like 4 different court styles, over the course of the season. But yeah, I agree. I miss those jerseys. They had a really rough like constellation era where they had like the Taurus,
the bull.
like
Didn't they have like a Taurus bull on there? Yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah. I'd say that not great right now. Could be better. I miss those late 90s, and I miss Reunion Arena. That thing was small. It's not like Cameron Indoor small, but like compared to basketball and hockey arenas now, that thing was tiny, but it got loud. It was absolutely rocking.
I love it, man. And then I want to reiterate what Devin was saying before. We so appreciate your time in here. I know you're busy right now doing the things over there, getting ready for the season. And again, I want to make sure you guys out there follow what Jared's doing over there. Follow him at Jared Sandler on X, and you guys can check him out, all the content over there. I'm sure he has great content coming out of Arizona. Early bird specials all included. What you're doing over there. But anything you want to just hype on the way out? I know we talked about your charity and everything going on, but anything you have going on that you want people to know on the way out?
Well, I'll just say that, I have so much appreciation for the 90s Yankees because, again, my whole family, my brothers and my dad are huge Yankees fans. Not, I can get to the Mets in a second, Devin, but like I just miss those. Baseball felt big in the 90s when the Yankees were on top. And I miss that. I don't know that it feels as big right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Even the Dodgers Yankees World Series, like that's like as good of a national matchup as you can get with the star power. I miss the days where it seemed like you have Baseball Tonight and John Miller and Joe Moore. I'd love to bring that back. And then from a Mets standpoint, I'm Jewish. I love Sean Green. Edgardo Alfonso is always one of my favorites for some reason.
Love it.
I do miss some good Mets baseball from back in the day. I root for the New York teams to be good. I also think it's funny now how we used to hate on the Yankees for spending money. They were the villains. Now I have the approach. I root for teams that spend money. I hate it for the fan bases that have owners that are unwilling to spend and they get rewarded with success. I want teams to spend, and I appreciate that the Yankees and the Mets spend money.
Yeah, I mean,
So
as a Met fan, I can say, I just
Devin.
wanted to say, as a Met fan, anytime there's a fan out there that's upset with what Steve Cohen does, I have to remind them like what I lived through, even though it was a New York fan base. Like you mentioned the Mariners before and how they have this pitching staff and they're not building around it. That very much reminds me of when it was still Wilpon's team and we had Syndergaard and Harvey and deGrom and Matz, who was supposed to be a big deal, and on and on and on.
And Rafael Montero.
Oh, yeah. Once upon a time. Yes. Montero as well. And we just made these small, tiny little incremental moves around it. So having Steve Cohen is such a breath of fresh air. And I think if anyone's rooted for the Mets for the last 20 to 30 to 40 or more years than that, they kind of deserve it. That's where my mindset is for the Mets.
To go full circle, Jared, I remember sitting at Yankee Stadium 2010, the ALCS. Obviously, the Rangers dominated, and it was Game 3. Cliff Lee struck out 13, wound up earning the win, and I was sitting next to 2 very nice older Rangers fans that were very, very – it was great talking baseball, and they had this preconceived notion about what the Bronx was. And when, obviously, the Rangers got up and they were listless, I think at one point – Gardner got on second. Like I think he had a dribbler single and wound up getting on second. The place was erupting because that was the only offense they had. when I tell you these two Ranger fans were, I wouldn't say fearful for their life, but they were almost apologetically upset that they had to like slink out of Yankee Stadium for fear that there'd be repercussions for the Rangers winning. But I walked out of that building. Obviously it's 15 years ago at this point. I was upset my team lost. I felt happy for them. And then I went on to watch the World Series. Obviously didn't go their way, but there was a certain happiness I had for those two fans because they were older. They were watching, Rangers baseball from the jump. And like there was an appreciation that they just wanted one, you know what I mean? And again, full circle, Eric Nadel called every single one of those games. And that's amazing feat that he's still continuing to be in the voice of the Rangers. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And when the Rangers won in 23, it was really cool to hear the stories of people who are like, I've been a Rangers fan since they moved in 72. I never thought I'd be alive to experience this and stuff like that. And that was neat. And, I hope that, there are fan bases out there that don't have a World Series to their name or ones that, it's been a long time. And, I obviously want the Rangers to win every year, but, yeah, I mean, it was such a cool experience to see what it meant for a community that had not experienced that. And guys, let's be honest, DFW's we're a major market. We got 4 major sports teams. You compare our success with the other major markets with 4 teams, the Boston, New England area, New York, Chicago, LA, it doesn't compare, especially since the Cowboys had their run in the 90s. We got 1 Stanley Cup, 1 NBA championship, and one World Series win. It seems like in a span of 5 years, some of these other major markets, get 3 championships spread out amongst the sports. So those titles here in DFW have meant a lot, and hopefully it's not going to be as bare of a cupboard here over the next few decades.
So again, you guys can check out Jared Sandler on TV and radio over there, Texas Rangers 105.3 The Fan. Check out everything he's doing pre and post game. Again, Jared, we thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you around the way.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much, fellas. Appreciate what you guys are doing, and thanks for having me.
All right. Once again, we want to thank Jared Sandler for hopping on with us, talking all things Texas Rangers. You guys make sure to follow him at Jared Sandler over there to make sure you guys get all his updates about what's going on in spring training. And of course, follow his coverage of the Texas Rangers throughout the season. Devin, I mean, people asked for a Texas Rangers episode, and I think we gave him that in spades here. An hour and 30 minutes, 90 minutes of amazing content. I feel well equipped for the season going in. Of course, there's a lot of different directions we could have took this interview, and I think Jared gave us every opportunity to answer the questions we had.
Yeah, I mean, every little bit. And I got to say, man, it's a weird feeling as a Met fan, but like, I'm like pumped up to see Jacob deGrom. And I'm like really, really hoping things go right, because you know what? He's still, no matter how his career ends, he'll still always be at least partly a Met. And if he were able to go get a 3rd Cy Young after that injury, like Jared mentioned the potential of, and being motivated to do that and getting into the Hall of Fame that way, possibly, that got me a little bit excited, the thought of that. So that's where my head is right now. Once the season starts, I'm going to be keeping tabs on Jacob deGrom and hoping for the best.
And of course, this will be a rare and elusive 3-episode week. We'll be back on Wednesday night recording with Greg Mamula of the Delaware Hens, talking all things college baseball, their start of the season. We'll take the conversation in different directions. Maybe we'll anchor at the end of this if there anything happens in the in-between. It feels like all the free agency buzz has died down. If there's any big news that drops, we will kind of do this little segment at the end, a lily pad to discuss. But this next episode, for episode 63, will largely be conversations about what he expects from the college season with the Delaware Blue Hens. And I know that's your alma mater, and that's something you're looking forward to. And it's a really good get. And we're thankful to Delaware for allowing him to come on. I know that there was a process, right? Like we need to follow the media. I mean, you and I are just used to just like DMing dudes, and we're just like, hey, do you want to come on? But apparently there's a process, right?
To be fair, Coach Mamula he responded to some comment I put somewhere, either on his page on Twitter or on Delaware Baseball's, and he DM'd us and said he'd love to do a pod. And so we scheduled it. And then I commented on Delaware Baseball something of like, hey, like, would love to get a follow from you guys. Coach Mamula's coming on the pod. And after that, they DM'd us like, hey, in the future, like if you want someone on, you got to go through such and such. Again, they said it's very nice about it, and maybe they know I'm an alum, probably not, but maybe they do. So we're happy to have him on, and next time we'll go through the proper channels as they would like us to. But yeah, Delaware Fighting Blue Hens, my alma mater, 0-3 start, but brighter skies ahead, I think.
We'll see if they're coming off a win when he comes on here, and that episode will drop on Thursday morning for you guys to get ready for your Friday Junior and lead yourself into the weekend. We appreciate you guys supporting what we're doing over here, and hopefully you're enjoying the ride. Like I said, if you're listening to this, just know we dropped an episode just prior to this talking about all the Alex Bregman news, all the drama with Rafi Devers, the drama obviously with Marcus Stroman that Jared alluded to on here. I think he put it perfectly if Stroman can get his head out of his tush, and that's putting it lightly, because he did put it very interestingly, because we consider, and we all know this, that injuries happen throughout the season. And that's something you and I really didn't discuss as the possibility. The Yankees may wind up needing Marcus Stroman as far as the depth goes. Like, who knows what goes on with Clark Schmidt? Who knows what is Luis Heel going to be the same guy as last year? And Marcus could be odd man out, but start the year in the bullpen, all of a sudden you're the fourth starter because two guys go down. Like that's pretty likely scenario. So, go back and listen to our episode about Devers and Stroman and the Bregman stuff. I thought it was a really good conversation.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And more to come. There's a little bit of drama in New York, a little bit of drama in Boston. So the writers there are probably pretty happy. Plenty to write about.
So make sure you guys follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at TableSettersPod. Please engage with all the reels that Devin's creating. Twitter is more of the active side of things, of course, trying to build up the YouTube presence. Check us out over there at TableSetters Baseball, posting video forums if you're consuming it in that way. You guys can also follow me at Acefield Retro as well. And, check us out, everything we're doing over here. But we'll be back, like I said, on Thursday morning with all new content, Wednesday night if you're up late, talking all things Delaware Blue Hens, Major League Baseball. But until that time, we will talk to you after a while.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by